logic that bears the mark of the master discourse. Lacan, through his teaching, has taught us to recognize the effects of master discourse. Among the different effects, but among them, one that is central, the identification of the subject to a signifier, S1 is the annotation that Lacan taught us, that becomes its own name, the name of the subject. For example, underperformer, underachiever, and so on. Name that has the particularity of being anonymous, as the master signifier designates a generic category in which the subject is included as a mere element of the class, and in this same movement produces a desubjectivation. The master discourse, in this sense, demands homogeneity. To do so, it requires a rejection or exclusion of that element which has revealed as unassimilable when presented in its heterogeneous quality with respect to the established identity. That is to say, the master discourse of effectiveness ignores the subjective sphere, since it fundamentally seeks to identify and locate the individual, not the subject, the individual. From this logic, it operates by individualizing in a plus or a minus with respect to a generic measure that is presented as synonymous to efficient performance, effectiveness. In this sense, any dispersion, any difference will be rejected, expelled. So here then we introduce a first distinction that touches on the center of the ethics of psychoanalysis. The subject for psychoanalysis is not the person, it is not the individual, it is not the self, nor the consciousness, nor the will. In this sense, the subject does not belong to the record of the data, but precisely accounts for the discontinuity in the data. The subject for psychoanalysis is what does not fit well, what does not make a series or a set. The subject is that which does not respond to a common measure. In this way, the subject in its absolute singularity resists any kind of generalization, standardization. This conception of the subject certainly contradicts the dispositives, discourses, and practice that in different spheres of life push towards quantification and generalization. In this line, for the analytic discourse, the subject is constituted at an ethical level. Why is that? Why the notion of subject belongs to the domain of ethics? Because we know that ethics belongs to the field of decision, to the extent that the one who suffers from a symptom makes a slip of the tongue or tells the narrative of a dream that has awakened them will decide if this concerns to them or it is a simply error or forgettable matters. If that which is out of line with the common measure, it is in fact a question that directly points out to a truth that belongs to the subject. In this way, the analytical discourse introduces a distinction between what is said and the act of saying, between speech and enunciation. To the willingness to say of the self, psychoanalysis proposes the location of the subject of the unconscious. This difference is central and supports the analytical act that leads those who come to a consultation to the encounter with their own unconscious, with that which is foreign and unknown, but which is at the same time the most intimate and personal. Thus, psychoanalysis distances itself from the discourses and practice that promote effectiveness, understood as a plus or minus with respect to a common measure, and introduces the subject of the unconscious in its exception, in its absolute singularity. So now I will give the floor to Lina Petraglia. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Lina Petraglia. I'm Brazilian. And for some context, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I have started taking an interest in psychoanalysis, and more specifically, Lacan, in my uni years. In Brazil, psychoanalysis is actually a very popular area of studies. A lot of people go to psychoanalysis, I mean as patients, and a lot of people are interested in becoming psychoanalysts. Psychoanalysis is taught in the university during psychology's bachelor, and quite a few professors in the universities are psychoanalysts. When I started working in a public psychiatric hospital, the service was led by a psychoanalyst, and most of my coworkers, might they be psychiatrists, social workers, or psychologists, were aligned with the psychoanalytical clinic. So imagine my surprise when I moved to the Netherlands 7 years ago and discovered not only psychoanalysis is not popular here, but more than that, Lacan even less. To be fair, a friend who went to university with me, Carol, who's here today, had warned me. I thought she was exaggerating. But I don't know. Turns out she wasn't, or looking at you, maybe we just looked in the wrong places. Despite the marginal presence of psychoanalysis in the public debate here today, this was not always the case. Actually, already in 1914, an important psychiatrist named Gerbrandes Jelgersma gave a speech embracing psychoanalytical ideas. In 1920, there was a big congress in The Hague, and things seemed to be flowing in a direction where psychoanalysis was being welcomed by many. When Second World War came, psychoanalysis took a hit. Apparently, an important group of analysts were anti-Semites and did not welcome Jewish colleagues during this time of horror. This has caused an important split in the group and weakened the psychoanalytical movement even after the war. Nevertheless, surprisingly, in the 60s, psychoanalysis was so popular here that it was completely covered by the health insurance. According to some sources, in the 70s, a big part of psychiatry and psychology professors in the Netherlands were psychoanalysts. The other day, I read an article attributing today's lack of interest in psychoanalysis to the fact that psychoanalytical societies kept themselves restricted to psychiatrists and psychologists. And this happened because as the government paid for the treatments, they regulated who could practice it. Because of this policy, psychoanalysis would never have entered the public debate. Nowadays, it's not the case anymore that psychoanalysts are paid by the health insurance. These have opted to only subsidize therapeutic approaches that can provide a prescription detailing how many sessions will be needed to achieve this and this result. It's frequent in our practice that we receive patients that had been in therapy prescribed by their GPs for the number of sessions they said would be needed, and they find it hard to understand how this is supposed to be enough. And now it even happens that psychologists that we know who work with the health insurance send us patients for whom they believe a psychoanalytical treatment is necessary. Having noticed this happening more and more is the reason we have decided to invite you here today. Psychoanalysis is sometimes stigmatized. People imagine it is difficult for the patient, that it must be long, it has to be expensive, that it involves a lot of suffering and talking about things they would rather forget. Well, psychoanalysis does not have to be that. It does involve talking, that's for sure. But it's less about the things you say, the traumatic stories you tell about your past, your childhood, and it's more about where you place yourself in them. It's not about reading what is beneath the words you're saying to discover an occult meaning to the words. A psychoanalyst has to listen, to read the structure of the patient's discourse, to find the subject of the unconscious, to find the words, the signifiers that he's alienated to point out where the unconscious desire lays. Psychoanalysis is difficult for the analyst because it requires going against what is seen as common sense. It requires being able to leave your moral judgments aside. When someone comes to analysis with a complaint, for instance, saying they have a burnout, complaining about their job, we are tempted to help them get rid of the job that provides this toxic environment he's complaining about. Or we could have the urge to help a teenager who procrastinates delivering his schoolwork by developing a schedule he will then follow, or not. But once we know that what is at stake there is the subject of the unconscious and not the person and their rationality, we have to think twice. Do we know what these symptoms of burnout or procrastination answer to? Do we understand what they might represent to the person complaining about them? People come to us, usually, because they got stuck on something in their lives. Everyone creates narratives about their lives. It's important that the analyst listens and welcomes these narratives, but the intervention must be at another level. Lacan adverts us against quickly understanding what someone comes to tell. Understanding is rational. It creates an imaginary effect that leaves out the subject of the unconscious. Our job is not to imagine we know what's going on in the patient's life and advise them on how to get rid of their problems. The analyst must differentiate between a rational demand and the unconscious desire. They have to explore the signifiers that the patient has brought, among them the burnout, procrastination, etc. The analyst has to find the signifiers the subject is alienated to. In interpreting their ideals, in pointing out the way they deal with what bothers them, in other words, in asking them what their subjective implication is in the suffering that they're complaining about, like Freud did with Dora, we see a spin in the structure of the discourse. Psychoanalysis does not attack a symptom, assuming that a burnout has to be dealt with in a number of sessions with a certain protocol. Symptoms are singular unconscious formation, and in this sense, there is no burnout like the other. Analysis is the rare opportunity to be heard in what you say. It's a punctuation mark for a patient saying, "How interesting. Your boss asks you to do something you think you should not do. You do it, and you wish he wouldn't have asked. This sounds important. This has effects. This person is going to leave, and they might come back saying, I do this in my marriage as well. I do this also with my parents. And we're going to ask about these situations and keep going along these lines." A different kind of therapeutic approach, focused on effective results, might advise them to get out of their comfort zone, do something different, follow these specific steps to achieve this result. That's not listening to the unconscious subject. That's proposing things. This may have an effect. The person may even leave work. But what effect did it have, subjectively speaking? The other day, someone came to me saying they were exhausted by their former therapy, that they left because they got overwhelmed by doing everything the therapist told them to do. Analysis, for Lacan, is what you expect from a psychoanalyst. The analyst sustains the dispositive of the treatment by receiving the discourse of the patient and provides the space for the unconscious experience to exist. And it's because we believe this subjective work involves talking about its effects publicly that we're here with you today. Regarding the effects of psychoanalysis in its own field of experience, Luis Iscovich, through his presentation, will give precise and rich orientations on this topic. Luis Iscovich is psychiatrist, PhD in psychoanalysis from University of Paris 8, and psychoanalyst. He was a professor at the Department of Psychoanalysis of Paris 8. He currently teaches psychoanalysis at the College of Clinical Psychoanalysis of Paris. He's a founding member of the School of the Lacanian Field Forums in France, and he directs Édition Stylus in France, dedicated to Lacanian-oriented psychoanalysis. And he practices psychoanalysis in Paris. Without further introduction, I'll give the floor to Luis.
Thank you. So, it works? Yes. Good evening. I'm very happy to be in Amsterdam to speak about psychoanalysis. I'm used to go to many places in Europe, elsewhere, but in Amsterdam, at least for psychoanalysis, is the first time. So I hope that you will not be disappointed listening to what I'm going to say. The two people that spoke before me said very interesting things, and I will try to follow this idea of effectiveness of psychoanalysis, which is a word not very much used for psychoanalysis, because, as you have said, in general, people don't speak about effectiveness. And this was a question for myself. How can I understand the question of effectiveness of psychoanalysis? As many of you know, to become analyst, you must go through an experience of psychoanalysis. So perhaps those who are well placed to speak about effectiveness is those who have gone through the experience of analyst. And thinking about this lecture, I said to myself that the relationship with a psychoanalysis is very different depending those who have gone through the experience and those who have not gone. Those who have not gone, in general, will not speak about effectiveness of psychoanalysis. Those who have gone, they can say that. It's something very difficult to demonstrate, but each one that has gone through the experience can say something about this. I will try to say something about this. I can speak for a long time, but I can stop whenever you want. I will give some elements for those who know what is a psychoanalysis, perhaps they will find this very boring. The structure of analysis is based on the transference. Transference implies the person of the analyst, and it implies that the analyst should become, at least the time of the treatment, the partner of the subject that address his or her question to the analyst. That's what Lacan called the analysand. So we have a couple, analyst and analysand. Analysand is the one who goes through the experience. In that way, it's easy to understand that the analyst is the complement of the symptom of the subject. If someone goes through the experience of analysis, it is because something does not go well. Something so goes wrong, and this is a symptom. A symptom, to say it very easily, it's what goes wrong. And the analyst must be at the place of becoming the complement of the symptom. That's why Lacan spoke, which is our common orientation, the orientation made by Lacan in psychoanalysis. He proposed the idea that there is a subject, as you have said, different from the person. The subject is the subject of the unconscious, which means, to say it very clearly, the person that speaks, and his unconscious, that he is not the master of the unconscious. But more clearly, what Lacan stated is the status of the subject is an hypothesis, which means that we make the hypothesis that someone is a subject, but the real subject is known after a certain time of analysis. Why? Because, as I said, we need the experience of the unconscious. In a certain way, that's why Freud stated, when Freud wrote his paper about what's the difference between someone that has gone to analysis and someone that has not gone, he said that after analysis, the subject has the conviction of the existence of the unconscious. If we speak among us, probably most of you would say, well, I believe in the idea that there is an unconscious. But do we really believe that there is something in our destiny that is guided but by something that we cannot guide, that we cannot have the master? We are not the master completely of our destiny because there is this unconscious. So the idea of the conviction of the unconscious, it is that there is something that we cannot have the possibility of knowing exactly what it is, but it's something that is in the position of being our master. So, as I said, many people have or criticize what psychoanalysis is, but not many, this is a big question, not many of those who have gone through the experience have criticized it. So, in this lecture, we will follow, this is my goal, what can be the certainty of the effects of analysis. This is the effectiveness. What we can put, what we can say as what are the effects of analysis that we find only if we go through the experience and nowhere else. The point is clear. It is that we state that there is a distinction, fundamental distinction between psychoanalysis and other forms of psychotherapy. So, our approach aims to elucidate how psychoanalysis is practiced today. As I said, the driving force of the treatment is the transference. That's what Lacan said. In the beginning, there is the transference. Without it, no possibility of analysis. And transference, what is? Transference is connected with knowledge, which means the one I suppose knowledge, I love him. This is a classical theory coming by Lacan, which makes the connection between love and knowledge. On the other hand, this is the other big proposal that Lacan made, which is the question of the act. Analysis is not just speaking, it requires an act. I will come back to this. The crucial point is that what Lacan introduces as something new in psychoanalysis is this question of act coming by the analyst. The act of the analyst implies the question of the decision, and it implies the question of engagement. That is to say, there is an engagement on the side of the patient, but mainly the engagement is on the side of the analyst. In all his work, what Lacan stated is to put the responsibility in what's going on in an analysis on the side of the analyst. In that sense, what is at stake is which is this responsibility. I come back to the beginning of what is a psychoanalysis. What Freud stated is the necessity of what he called the free association, which is to speak, which is to say, offer the possibility to someone to speak whatever he wants, whatever comes to his mind, without any restriction. try to do that, you will find that it's not easy to speak without restriction. So, he bases this on the experience on speech. And he started from this principle that the analytic process works against repression, with the idea that the more we speak, the more is possible to emerge what has been repressed. The idea is to liberate something repressed on the subject. Lacan has chosen this perspective from the beginning of his teaching, trying to make the difference between what he called the empty speech and the full speech. The empty speech is to speak to say nothing. Every day we have many things that we say that they don't have any consequences. And there are few moments in which we say something that is very crucial. This is the distinction between empty speech and full speech. The idea of this gave to Lacan the idea of the time of the sessions. He introduces the idea that time of a session must not be chronological, because time of chronology is setting each time the same time of session. It means that it's possible to fulfill the session with empty words, but what is crucial is to produce the emergency of the full speech. In that sense, Lacan tried to find out how to produce each session as being a session in which emerge the full speech. The point is that already Freud realized that not everything can be said. You try to speak, you try to say, even the things that you won't really say, but there is something that escapes, something you cannot grasp about yourself. And this is what Lacan stated at a certain moment in his work, saying that he has to abandon the idea of the possibility that is possible to capture the desire, the unconscious desire, through the speech, because that's what he stated, there is something incompatible between speech and desire. The idea is, it exists an unconscious desire, but it's not only speaking that we can grasp this desire. Nevertheless, speech remains for Lacan the condition of the transference, and therefore of an analysis. First of all, because speaking in analysis is linked to the presence of the analyst. Certainly, we don't speak to an analyst as we speak to anybody else. In that sense, what someone says to analysis is the response to the presence of the analyst. And also, in that sense, speaking to that person constitutes this person in a special person, as I said, in a special partner. Speaking has a dimension of alienation to the other. Alienation is to enter in the desire of the other, which is something which is required in the analytical experience. Sometimes I heard, well, I go to an analyst since 2 years, 3 years, and people say, well, aren't you are not alienated to the other? Well, it's true. It's a kind of alienation. But the goal of analysis is not alienation. It's separation. It is because someone enters in a discourse that there is alienation and there is a possibility of separation. And separation is what constitutes the possibility of having the own desire. So, alienation in transference has its point of insertion in the speech of the transference. So, this attention produced through the transference experience and the relationship between the speaker and the one who listens to this. What is expected of analysis? What is expected? First of all, what is expected is an interpretation. Interpretation in relationship with what? In relationship with, as I said, what goes wrong, the symptom. There is a clear definition. The first one, definition of a symptom in Lacan, when he says that the symptom is the frozen speech. Frozen speech is very interesting because it shows us that it's very easy to see the symptom of the other. It's not very easy to see our proper symptom. How do we see the symptom of the other? The idea of frozen speech is the idea of something that comes back all the time to the same words. He cannot go beyond and speaks all the time more or less about the same thing. To speak about the same thing. And when we look around us, we have the experience, each one has the experience of the other, that when he speaks or she speaks, it's more or less the same. This is his or her symptom. We think that we don't have symptoms. This is the problem. And very often it's the partner we have that says, well, this is something that does not turn good for you. So initially, the symptom is the interpretation coming by the other. And the analyst is in this position. The analyst is in the position of trying to show what is the symptom for a subject. As you see, I'm not speaking about the symptom in relationship with normality. A symptom, it's not something that is in the direction of what is not common. People very often, when they ask me, when they know that I am psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, oh, what I am doing or what I am saying, is it normal? The question is not this. The question, it doesn't exist, normal people. What does it mean, normal people? The point is not the question of normality. The question is, what is the frozen speech for each one? In reality, the symptom is what for each one is a symptom. So there is no general symptoms. What is symptomatic is what a subject grasps as symptomatic for himself. The other idea, when we say that desire cannot be grasped with speech, it is because there is a gap between desire and speech. Spinoza, that most of you know better than me, Spinoza is the one who said that the essence, what is essential in desire is the fact that the desire comes from the other. And this is something that Lacan took from Spinoza. He took the essential point of desire is that the desire in the beginning is the desire of the other. And this is what essentially is at stake in psychoanalysis. Is it possible to have our own desire not connected with the desire of the other? This implies what I have said before in terms of separation. The main separation that must be produced through analysis is in relationship with the desire of the other, with the idea of producing our own desire. So this is what the experience of the unconscious makes as a big difference between the one who has gone through the experience and the one who has not. The point is, as I said, to produce this, someone goes through the experience of analysis, putting the analyst in the position of what Lacan called the position of agalma. What is the agalma? Agalma is what in the symposium of Plato stated as the position of Socrates in relationship with Alcibiade. Alcibiade is in love with Socrates. He is in love because he has found on the side of Socrates something that is very special, who he cannot know what it is, but produces in Socrates something special for Alcibiade. Well, this is the main point of the transference, the point in which the analyst must become this precious object for the one who asks him, the one, as I said, the analysant. Why he must be in this position? Because this is not something that it's a goal in itself. This is the necessity to produce at the end someone who is able to destitute the other. In order to destitute the other, we must go in the beginning through the experience that the other is in the position of agalma. If we produce this operation in which there is a transformation between agalma and destitution, is possible for a subject not to be in a position of idealization of the other and believe in his own unconscious. I came back about the question of effectiveness, which has gone through the big debates in the history of analysis. The question also comes in terms of what is our political position in relationship with health and about institution that accepts or not psychoanalysis. Institution, or sometimes the question of the politics, is to consider that we cannot speak about efficiency in psychoanalysis. The question of efficiency is a question that requires the notion of evaluation. And I think that it's possible to evaluate analysis. It's possible, it's true that evaluation is the key term made by it has been said, by the master's discourse. Try to evaluate everything. And the point is, if it is possible to evaluate psychoanalysis, Lacan has created a disposal inside analytical institution in which psychoanalysis is evaluated by the analyst. I mean, he proposed a disposal in which someone must, if he wants, it's not something that he is obliged, but he can give the testimony about how he has had the desire of becoming analyst. The desire of becoming analyst is not a fantasy. It could be a fantasy. People say, what is nice being analyst. You will earn a lot of money. You will be very quiet in your room. You will not need to work a lot. All these are fantasy. Is what we can imagine about the life of an analyst. We are not analysts because of that. The main point is why someone can have this desire, a very strange desire, a desire in which Lacan said about Socrates. He said he could have been the first psychoanalyst if he had accepted to be paid. Of course, Socrates, he didn't ask to be paid, but what Lacan tried to show is a dialectical position in which someone leads someone else to find the answers without giving the answer. In that sense, it's true that it has something to do with analytical experience. How, without giving our answer about what is life, what is love, what someone must do, how, without saying anything of this, the other can find the answer. It doesn't mean that the analyst does not do anything. He's not there just to wait. That's why I was speaking about responsibility. If you have heard what I spoke about responsibility and about act. The act of the analyst is to produce an effect in order that someone, he will become not the same as he was before. And this is something that we can make the experience. Those who have gone through the experience make the experience in analysis that they are not anymore like before. Could we say the same thing about all the psychotherapies? I will give you an example. One person who is in analysis with me came to see me after going 10 years to see a psychotherapist. So he has been in psychotherapy, and I asked him, so how did it end, the psychotherapy? Why are you coming to see me after 10 years of psychotherapy? And that person said to me, well, I was very happy with my psychotherapy, and the last session I told him that I was very happy, so I was surprised what's going on, why he's coming to see me. And he added, I told my therapist that everything was great, but he didn't go to the essential point, And that's why I come here. I want to go to the essential, which means that psychotherapy produces effects. It can produce very good effects, but something crucial does not allow the subject to be different towards he was before. So the point is there a turning point that allows us to say that psychoanalysis is completely a new experience, completely different to what someone can do everywhere? Well, this is my idea. This is why I have written this book. Here is in French. I don't know if it is also in English. It has been translated in English. I don't know if you can find it in Amsterdam, which is The Marks of Analysis. The marks of psychoanalysis means why the not in singular but in plural. Plural, you say? Plural. Why? Because there is a first mark in each one. The first mark is the mark produced by the other in our body. Each one carries the mark of the other in the body. This is what produces someone as an exception, someone as different of the others. You spoke about singularity. Singularity, what does it mean? Singularity means an exception, something that escapes not only to the rule, but something that is only in that case. So, this is singularity. The singularity is connected to a mark on the body. The point is why I don't speak about a singular mark, and we speak with a plural. We speak about the plural. This is my idea, because analysis introduces a new mark. This is the difference between someone who has gone through the experience and someone who has gone, for instance, through psychotherapy. Psychotherapy produces a knowledge. I know more things about myself, which is good. It's better to know than not to know. The idea of psychoanalysis is not just you can know more about yourself. The idea is there must be something that must change in what you are in order that you are not the same as before the experience. This is the idea of introducing a new mark. And this is the mark that comes in relationship with an experience of speech, but connected with the interpretation of the analyst that lives on the side of the subject, the conviction that this experience is something that has completely changed his life. As I was presented, I am director of a printing house, and I have produced a book which is called The Practice of Lacan. And I ask people who have gone in analysis with Lacan, and I ask them, this was my question. So try to tell me what was your experience with Lacan, your analytical experience, of course. And there were 9 people that encountered Lacan between, let's say, 1960, 1970, in that period of time. And they stay with Lacan many years. What is very interesting that most of them, in the beginning, they were against psychoanalysis, against Lacan. It was the period of May 68, in which there was a big contestation about the master, and people spoke to Lacan saying, you behave like a master. And Lacan say, okay, just go on speaking. And those who accepted went to analysis with him, trying to explain why you are a master. They enter into transference. As I said, the more you speak with someone, the more you produce transference in relationship with that person. Well, all these people, this is written in that book, perhaps one day it will be translated in English, all they say how their life has completely changed. So, first of all, psychoanalysis is a question of changing his life. It's not a question just of knowing a little bit more about oneself. So when Freud said that end of analysis is the conviction of the existence of the unconscious, is not just to say, well, if I have a dream means that I have a desire that has been repressed, so it means that I have a desire. This is something that everyone can say, that in the dream, there is something about our desire. The question of the conviction. The conviction is a very strong word to have the conviction. Is when Freud used that term. It's a word that we use in the cases of psychosis. Very sick people that without trying to prove something, they have the conviction. But it's not the same to have the conviction without a test, without trying to demonstrate, that going through the experience. So the point is, psychoanalysis is not for everyone. Psychoanalysis, if someone can avoid psychoanalysis, it's much better. Because you expend time, you expend money, so it's something completely against capitalism. So we live in a world of capitalism. Why psychoanalysis that goes exactly in the opposite way? Most of the people that they go, it is because they have no option. They speak to an analyst because they don't find a partner to speak about things that are not easy to say. Well, the point is that this conviction about what Freud said, the conviction of the existence of the unconscious, is to make the experience that in the end we know that all what we have done in our life, it's something that is determined by our unconscious. Everything. Our work, our choices of partner, the relationship we have with our partners, in which place we put our partners, everything is done by our unconscious. And it changed completely. The fact of knowing this and making the experience that we know this and how this unconscious has been transformed by analytical experience. So it's not only that we know, it's also that there has been an effect to this unconscious. This effect, and I will finish there, this effect on the unconscious is what makes the difference between someone who made the experience, someone who has not. So, as I said, it's not only a question of knowledge, it's a question about how to change our relationship with the decisions we make in life. Well, I think it's time to stop, and I would like to discuss with you that I don't know who you are.
Thank you so much, Luis. So we will open the session for the Q&A. You can take this.
Or comments, maybe?
Yeah. There's a question there in the back.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for your wise words. I work as a psychologist myself, and I recognize a lot of the things you talked about. One of the things that I was thinking about during your talk is humans are the only animals that are able to speak. but we are not the only animals that have emotions or feelings and have ideas. And for example, you talked about transference, and I was thinking, good transference, what is that based on? Is it a feeling? Is it a cognition? Are you talking with someone and trusting someone because there's trust there, or is it because of friendship, or what sort of relationship is it? So based on what do you make the decision? Is it a conscious decision? And if it's not a conscious decision but an unconscious decision, what guides that decision process making?
Well, very interesting question. I don't think that there is transference among animals. You're right. There can be emotions in animals. The question about transference, as I said, is connected with knowledge and the supposition that we put on the side of the other a knowledge about ourselves. This is the point about transference. It's not just the knowledge about everything. It's not the knowledge we can find in a teacher, a professor. A professor or a teacher can have a knowledge that we don't have. The question about transference is a supposition of knowledge about our own unconscious. About our unconscious, what does it mean? About what we don't know about ourselves, and we think the other can help to decipher this thing which is enigmatic. That's why I stated in the beginning of analysis there is transference, which is connected with love, but love connected with knowledge, and at the end it ends because we think that what has been deciphered, it's enough. And the knowledge we understand is not on the side of the other, but it is on our side. This is the main problem of every subject. Every subject thinks that there is something that is not complete in him or herself, and the others knows better. At the end, the one who knows is the subject. But to arrive to this point, it's necessary, what Lacan said, an operation. An operation between, as I said, in the beginning, the agalma, at the end, the destitution. So, transference, it's a question of love, but it's a question of speech. That's what Lacan took from the Catholicism. In the beginning, there is the verb.
Hi, my name is Thelma. Thank you all for organizing this. First of all, I cannot really formulate a question, which I think is good because it created a lot of confusion. So I'll share just a thought. When you're talking about the unconscious and this conviction of something that drives me, my life, and I don't have control over, it came to my mind all the time the relationship with God, for people that believe in God as a major force or a driving force that controls everything, that everything that happens in their lives is driven by a force. So how is this different?
Well, this is a very important question, because it's true, if someone believes completely without any doubt that everything comes from God, psychoanalysis is not possible. At least in one point, the subject must have a doubt about the idea that God knows everything. So in all this, there is the question of what is the cause of things. If we have the conviction that everything finally is a question made by God, there is no discussion. That's why Lacan said that the true Catholic cannot be analyzed.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, I will try translate this. Okay, the first, thank you very much, Luis Skovic, for coming here. It's a really pleasure for us. It's a really important mark in the psychoanalysis in Netherlands, I hope this. So you told about the when someone can be know the existence, the inconscient during in your analysis. Maybe my question is maybe we can relation make a sorry. I think it's in French because we talk another language. Okay, maybe we can make a relation with when we know the inconscience exists. We can make a relation about the new desire. Sorry, the new desire who happened in the end of the analysis. It's yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Well, as I said, in the beginning there is the verb, in the beginning there is the love, again towards the analyst in order to produce this process. But we go to an analyst because something, as I said, does not work well. There are symptoms, there is anxiety, inhibitions, so it's not possible to go through analysis just, as I said, to know oneself. We go because we have anxiety, inhibition, and symptoms. The point is what comes to an end, what's at the end of the process. At the end of the process, we cannot say that the symptom does not exist anymore, because the symptom is what I said, the mark on the body. So this is something that someone goes on carrying all his life. But what changes is about desire and about love. Freud has said in a very simple way, at the end of analysis, someone can be able to love and to work much more than it was before. So the big change is about work and love, which is true, because what does someone care most in his life? The relationship with love and the relationship with work. That's what people speak in analysis. They speak about their family, but in connection with what? In connection with love and in connection with work. And most of the people make the experience that when it goes well with love, it doesn't go well with work. And when it goes well with work, it doesn't go good with love. So when Freud said it must change work and love, it means both of them. The point is that it's not enough because, well, there are moments in life in which things are good in relationship with love and work. The point is when we speak about effectiveness. Effectiveness means the evaluation if really someone has changed his relationship with desire. The point with desire is we make the experience that there are moments in which we have a desire and the moment later we have the experience that the desire disappears. This is which is common to everybody. It's very difficult to maintain, to keep a desire stable. And much more, what is difficult is to have a desire not in connection with what the other expected to us, expected about us. This is the common experience also. When we are child, our parents, they want something for us. What we will do in life, our destiny, is different from what the other expect of us. That is something that must be proved. What we have done is for us or for the other. And the new desire, it's a desire that must be proved that it comes from us, which means that comes from our unconscious. Well, it doesn't mean that at the end we become selfish. This is something we heard. People that have gone through analysis, they think about their own desire. They are selfish people. Well, not at all. To have one desire, a true desire, a desire which is something completely new, it's possible if we have at the same time the possibility of keeping the place of the desire of the other. This is the main point. Something must change in our desire, and at the same time we leave the possibility that the desire of the other, the partner especially, must not be the same as our desire.
So now we will have time for a quick boreo. So we invite you to have a glass of wine. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you so much.